Okay, well, week 5, John. We're at the halfway point of the season already. It feels like time has flown by us as we get set for another edition of Football Fridays. Man, some really good region discrepancies, if you will. A lot of teams near the top still. A lot of teams trying to vie for position like we'll see tonight.
Yeah, our game of the week, you're going to be out there in Warren County is Warren and Meadville. You know, the interesting part, I think, of this season, if we've had so many cancellations, movements, again, it's going to remember it's going to come down to winning percentage, not so much the number of wins. Of course, wins will always help, and when you stack those up. But yeah, going to be an interesting one tonight. You've got a team that likes to pass the ball in Warren versus that high-flying running attack that Meadville totes out each and every night.
Yeah, we'll see how that game goes down, but we've got a lot of good matchups to get to. Not many of them are in Erie County, though, and we'll tell you that in a second.
Stretching the road legs.
I know. We're putting the miles on those cars tonight. All right, first game, though, we've got on our list is in Erie County. Actually, the first two games are in Erie County. Cathedral Prep taking on St. Francis, a battle of undefeateds. The Ramblers trying to stay unbeaten as they get ready for that Week 7 matchup with McDowell.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup tonight because Cathedral Prep's going in and looking at the rankings of everything, one of the top teams, not just in their classification, but in all of Ohio.
Yep.
So St. Francis coming in with a certainly tough opponent for the Ramblers tonight, and it will be a good test as you want to get playoff tested as you go throughout the season.
Other games we've got going on, Seneca visiting Iroquois. We have Harbor Creek taking on Oil City, Northeast in Titusville. Any games on that three-game slate there, John, that you think is interesting?
Well, I want to make a note. Again, Iroquois still working at John L. Post Stadium, so this game is at Harbor Creek High School. But this is the game that sticks out to me, and that is Harbor Creek and Oil City. We know the battle that they had last year all the way to the end for the district title. Two teams that certainly aren't the same teams that they were a year ago. This could be a game for at least one of them to maybe right the ship and try and find some direction to see if they can get back to the winning ways and make that push in the second half.
Yeah, and again, you never know with this, with the Region 5 standings being as close as they are. This could be a stepping stone. Like you said, you win this game, you win a couple of more, all of a sudden you're in the race, you get towards the postseason. You never know what's going to happen. So that should be a good one tonight, Harbor Creek at Oil City. As we go to our second graphic, this is where our game of the week comes into play. We'll go straight to the bottom, Meadville and Warren. Two teams that love different forms of offense. The Dragons and Mark Morelli, gosh, they love to throw the football at will. Meadville is a run-first team. And again, as you look at this game, two teams undefeated in region play. The winner claims the top spot in Region 5. I mean, two contrasting styles. What's the deal breaker tonight, John?
Well, I think, this was, I was down at Meadville just a couple of days ago, and I was talking to Ray Collins, and he said, you look at our record, and we have 2 losses, but he said really a turning point for his younger players on his team was that Butler game. They didn't, he said, the score says that we didn't play that well, but he goes, there was so much growth from that team out of that game. They played hard, and the younger players saw that fine line between a win and a loss. He said that was a big part. Meadville, again, that running attack with the blockers that they have up front, even though it's a younger offensive line, really can make a difference. But, boy, the sophomore passing game out in Warren, that's something that you don't see a lot, especially for Meadville in terms of their region. You usually see that in the 6A or that classification. So I don't know which way. I mean, you could toss a coin on this one.
You know, and it's interesting you were talking about how Meadville's best, I guess, the way they viewed the season, the most critical game was a loss. Same for Warren. We were talking with Coach Morelli just yesterday, and he said really the game that woke us up was the Cathedral Prep game. They came in 2-0, a lot of momentum. They looked like they were on the right track, and they get blown out. They were, quite frankly, destroyed, couldn't move the ball on offense, and he said that was the game where we realized what our flaws were. We knew we had to shore stuff up on defense and righted the ship next week with a win. So we'll see. Winner takes the top spot in Region 5 for the moment. That will be our game of the week. Other games, Eisenhower looking for a comeback after last week's loss to Cockerton. A lot of people consider that an upset as the Knights were defeated by the Cardinals, who right now stand atop Region 2 but won't play on Saturday. Cambridge Springs coming in there. We have Union City, Sagertown, 2 teams looking for their first win. Also 2 teams looking for their first win, Franklin Conneaut.
Yeah, this is the battle of the winless so far, but teams that have been close in some games. Franklin's certainly been in some games that have gone down to the wire. And then Union City coming off their off week last week because of COVID issues with their program. Sagertown has dealt with that as well. So some teams maybe just it's about finding consistency and rhythm and playing back-to-back weeks. That's been a challenge for programs throughout District 10 here and around the state so far this season.
And Eisenhower would love, like we said, to come back with a win. Their offense didn't really look too sure of themselves in that loss to Cochranton. Only scored 7 points. They were down 19-0 at the half, so they'll have to continue to win to keep up in region play.
And the key note from that is they played Cochranton because they moved that up as a region game after, I believe, 2 games last week were canceled. So they were planning for a third opponent in a week. So not making excuses. Again, Cochranton came out and played well in that game, but factors that could have contributed to Eisenhower's performance.
All right, other games we've got going on. Again, you'll notice a lot of these games are not in Erie County, including Reynolds and Conneaut, Ohio. That is a game that was not scheduled as of yesterday, but because of a cancellation with Girard coming with COVID issues, the Raiders coming to play the Spartans. We also have undefeated Fairview at Grove City. John, this is going to be a tough game for the Tigers. The Eagles coming in almost, in a way, their record should be better than what it is. They've played a lot of great games, a lot of close games that they couldn't come up with a win. Fairview's going to have their hands full after Coach Mark Sobolewski said the last 2 weeks have not been the team's best.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, after this one, how the practice went this week, because he said that was the big indicator. And last week against Corey, Fairview struggled to get out of the gates. They fell behind at one point early in the second half, but were able to rebound. And you speak of Grove City, they lost to Fort LaBeouf. Fairview has Fort LaBeouf next week, which is going to be a primetime matchup, the homecoming game for the Bison. So this could be a good indicator of where Fairview stacks up in that going into that game and just where they stand overall as they head across the 3A classification for the playoffs, because these are some teams, Grove City, Fort LaBeouf, that they will see come postseason time.
And again, you want to talk about winning your region, not that that's the most important thing, but Fairview, Fort LaBeouf, both undefeated, and they've got a matchup really soon. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. How about Hickory taking on Mercyhurst Prep at home? The Hornets looking to build almost a mid-season run. I think they've picked up their game a lot more in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and this is interesting because there's always playoff history between these two teams. Within the last 5 years, these two teams have met, and Hickory has had the upper edge, but Mercyhurst Prep has gotten a win in there. So for Mercyhurst Prep, I think they stand at 1-1, so they're only going into their third game of the season. Can they gain some traction? They had some success in the second half last week against Girard, and their passing game really started to open up with Baum at quarterback. So I'm interested to see how they can do against this Hickory team.
1-1 going into week 5. COVID issues, folks, they haven't gone away in 2021. All right, moving up the map here. Farrell Steelers, they are playing a lot much better. I say this every week. Their offense is much better than the Pittsburgh Steelers offense right now. They're averaging, get this, 62 points per game. This is unbelievable. Taking on Sharpsville. The Blue Devils aren't too shabby either, but man, Farrell's offense, they are going to be tough to take down at all this season. They're looking at a state title.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have the makings of some of those teams in the past that have just ran their way through all of District 10 and all the state competition. So we'll see if Sharpsville can slow them down. I think there's a stopping Farrell, but if you can slow them down, maybe you give yourself a shot.
How about General McLean and Butler? The Lancers coming off of a win, a dominant win over Conneaut last week after they had a game canceled because of COVID issues. Butler, talk about looking impressive in the loss. The Golden Tornado coming into the second half. They tied the game with McDowell. The Trojans won late. It was a 38-21 game. But, man, Butler looked like a much-improved team. They're going to be a tough team to beat the rest of the way as they go through Region 6. Yeah,
6A power, they have the numbers, and they've showed Meadville. They won against Meadville, and as you mentioned, they kept it close. I think for them, it's about cleaning up some of the penalties. From what I wasn't at the game. Obviously, you were, Isaac, covering that game. It just seemed like those are the things that stopped any momentum for that team, and then some missed opportunities. But yeah, Butler should be a good test for John Amon and company tonight on the road for the Lancers.
Meanwhile, Maplewood, after getting a win over Brockway last week, it was a sloppy game, still getting the win, though, in that game, and they'll take on Mercer. And how about Fort LaBeouf visiting Sharon? That should be another high-flying octane game. The Bison looking to stay undefeated. Sharon, though, coming up well in the last couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, 3-1, they come into this one, and this is another great game. I believe, if I was looking at the classifications earlier, just in the playoffs, I think this could be another potential playoff matchup in the 3A classification. So this will be a good test, a good preview. Fort LaBeouf, that running game, three-headed monster that really hasn't been slowed down. Can Sharon be the first team to really challenge the Bison so far this season?
Talk about Class 3A teams like Fairview and Fort LaBeouf going to have to play teams potentially like Grove City and Sharon in the PIAA playoffs. That's not an easy out for any of those two teams as they move through the season. Other games that we have going on, a couple of Saturday ones for you. You've got Lakeview taking on Wilmington, McDowell taking on Erie, game being played at Veterans Stadium at 1 o'clock. We'll have that for you. Greenville, Kennedy Catholic. What do you like on this, John?
Well, I mean, the 6A showdown always stands out when you get that one. You'd love to have it on Friday nights, but with the new Erie School District policy, they're moving all their home games to Saturday for the safety of students and such. And I believe that it's just for players, families, and onlys. They've got to report names. So, general public, I don't believe will have access to this game. Mm-hmm. But for Erie High, they've been close on a couple of occasions. Didn't go their way after coming from behind last week against Brashear. For McDowell, maybe they had it last week again. I didn't see their game, but their two previous games that I was at, the rhythm of the offense kind of representative, as you mentioned earlier, like the Pittsburgh Steel. They have their moments, but they just can't find that role. Could this be their get-right game against their rival who they'll face, everything plays out correctly in the District 10 championship game, and see how that goes.
Well, and you look at a guy like Artis Simmons, I think he's been the key for the McDowell offense, but you're right, that Saturday game when they played Butler, it was a penalty-filled game. The Golden Tornado got a lot of penalties as well, but so did McDowell, and they weren't grinding penalties, personal fouls, false starts, had Coach Orlando really up in a tizzy in the first half of that game, and I think it was the defense that won it late. So can McDowell's defense continue that pressure against Erie in a game that, of course, is important for region implications? All right, I don't think we have any more games, John, but let's chat about key games tonight. There are a lot of good ones, albeit decent drives away. I mean, any that in particular you're keeping your eye out for?
I think if I'm going to go with a big three tonight, I'm going to go with Fairview, Grove City, Fort LaBeouf, and Sharon, and then I'm going to go with the Warren-Meadville game. I think those three are the ones that really just highlight some potential matchups down the road as the season progresses on. Good test tonight, and I'm looking forward to seeing what transpires with all those games, because it's going to be a fun time. And then, of course, these kids and coaches put in so much work. You look at these two games, maybe they're not going to be there at the end in terms of standings, but just getting your first win of the season, that's always an important part of a football, to see your hard work rewarded. So from those perspectives, we'll see which teams can grab out of the four their first win of the season. Yeah,
I'm looking at the Meadville-Warren game, too. I also like General McLean-Butler. I think that could be a good testing point for both teams, albeit different regions, but I think considering the fact that really, I think teams that struggled out of the gate early, General McLean getting blown out earlier in the season when they played Meadville. Butler had a couple of tough games in the early season. How can they respond in a game that really should feature a lot of offense? Of course, our game of the week, Meadville and Warren. I really, really think this is going to come down to the wire. I know a few of our games of the week have been blowouts, but this is one of those games. Coaches know each other well, and I think with contrasting styles, to me it's going to be, John, is it Meadville's passing game or Warren's running game that will be the success? We know that the Dragons are going to probably stack the box, 6 or 7 guys, force Meadville to throw the football. For Meadville, it's going to be, can you prevent that passing game? And I think the key factor tonight also, too, could be special teams, field position. How exactly can you pin teams deep in your own territory? Can you force the ball to the boundaries if need be? What's your prediction for tonight for Game of the Week here?
Game of the Week, okay. I'm going to go... I'm going to go 35-21, Meadville.
And again, would be a high-scoring game. But once again, these two teams so close in stature. I'm going to save my prediction for a little bit later on. So will Jovan Johnson. Any final things that we've got?
No, it'll be exciting. Hey, as always, we'll have crews throughout the area posting pictures from all the games that we're at tonight. If you have photos that you want to share, some great moments, feel free to send them to our email or our Facebook and social media pages. We'll get those up online. And then we'll see you all 10 o'clock for the first little dose of Football Fridays, and then the full show coming up tonight at 11:15.
And, of course, 5:30, 6 o'clock, Erie News Now. Jovan and I live at Warren for Game of the Week. It's Week 5, middle of the season, turning